Cooper Kupp will be active on Sunday. Should he be in your lineups or not? And Jonathan Taylor, if he is active, should he be in your lineups or not? We're going to go through it real quick here on the ADP Average Dudes podcast. I am your Average Dude host, Matt Mormon. A double episode Friday for you on this Friday, October 6th, because I just got done recording my Beat the Waiver Wire episode where you kind of can go out there and try to pick up these players in preparation for those bye weeks in week 6 and some good streaming options moving forward. And then I got an alert on my phone saying, hey, Cooper Kupp, he's going to play this weekend. So I said, it's official now. I have to actually start to make decisions in regard to this. And so I'm just going to walk you guys through a little bit of what my thoughts are in terms of Cooper Kupp as well as Jonathan Taylor. Don't know for sure if he's going to be playing or not. So keep tabs on that yourselves this weekend and find out for sure. But let's go through Cooper Kupp first because we know that for sure. Cooper Kupp will be active against the Philadelphia Eagles on Sunday. And the Eagles have not been a particularly tough matchup for wide receivers at all, actually. They rank 7th in wide receiver points allowed. If I've got Cooper Kupp, I am plugging him straight into my lineup in some capacity. I'm sure of it. It is incredibly unlikely that you've got multiple players that I would rather start over him. You're starting him over, I think, pretty much every guy that's been a waiver wire darling so far this season, like a Nico Collins, Tank Dell, both of those guys being from the Texans. I would be starting him over like Christian Watson against the Vegas Raiders. Who are some other guys that are kind of a little bit more mid-range drafted you might be making decisions on? Hollywood Brown against the Bengals. I'd rather be starting Cooper Kupp than, I would be starting him over Calvin Ridley. Calvin Ridley at Buffalo this week. If that's a decision you're having to make, I would be starting Cooper Kupp over him this week. I think that the only real interesting decision, funny enough, is kind of him and Puka, right? Like, I think Puka is the only waiver wire pickup that I could see myself drafting and flexing my way to the point where it's like, well, do I have to start one of these guys? Do I start both of them? In a league, I will be starting both of them. That's a situation, though, where my flex option was going to be Jaylen Warren this week. So I don't love that. But against Philly, I don't mind the idea of starting both of these guys. I think Tutu Atwell becomes a sit, maybe a desperation flex if you have to. For example, I would have started him over like a Jahan Dotson last night. I would start him over your Drake Londons of the world, kind of those disappointing guys. I would be starting him over both the Broncos guys, I think, still, Tutu Atwell. I would rather start Jordan Addison. I'd rather start Romeo Doubs than Tutu. Both those Texans that I mentioned before, I would start both of those guys over Tutu. I think Tutu becomes a desperation flex option. I think Puka, for this week, I want to see how things go. I think for this week, Puka becomes still a pretty solid, reliable wide receiver too. I think it's most likely if you have Puka Nacua, you are still keeping him in your lineup this week. But the arrival of Cooper Kupp does complicate that a little bit. I don't think you can count on him being a, wide receiver 1 option for you, which is what he's been all season. It's been gravy. It's been awesome. I'm a little bit nervous about that happening with Cooper Kupp being here, but by no means do I think Puka Nacua becomes a sit. I think you're playing both Puka, you're playing Kupp. Like I said, I think it's really hard. There are going to be loaded teams out there. There are going to be 8-team leagues out there where you can get away from one of those guys. But I think in general, I'm playing both of them, and I'm sitting Tutu Atwell. I do think also, by the way, this does to me make Matthew Stafford a bit more interesting. I would be playing him over Daniel Jones. I'd be playing him over CJ Stroud. I would be playing him over Joe Burrow for sure. I think I'd even be playing Stafford over Trevor Lawrence. Lawrence has a matchup against Buffalo that's not great. Trevor hasn't been great for you. Yeah, I would stream and I would start Matthew Stafford over Trevor Lawrence. I would start Jared Goff over Stafford. Justin Fields played last night. Hopefully you started him because that was a great game for both him and DJ Moore. I think that's pretty much it though. Like I would start all of your Mahomes, Allen, Hurts, Lamar, Tua, Richardson, Cousin, Fields. I would start all those guys over Stafford. That's 8. Yeah, I think that pretty much slots that's our Goff. So I think that pretty much slots Stafford is a low-end top 10 quarterback for me this week. I will definitely be making some DFS lineups built around a Matthew Stafford, and then I'm going to look at the dollars and see what Puka and Kupp are rated at as far as how much it's going to cost me to put one of those guys into my lineups. Tyler Higbee kind of falls off the radar, I think, now. I don't know if there's enough footballs around. There's a lot of footballs out there in LA. They throw the ball around a lot. I don't know if there's quite enough to also get Higbee his in this one now that Kupp is back. I don't expect Kupp to be awesome, by the way. I don't expect him to be a wide receiver 1. I kind of expect him to also be a wide receiver 2 this week. Looking at rankings, like I would put him probably right around wide receiver like 15 or so, kind of around like a Garrett Wilson at Denver. Debo's got the Cowboys. Michael Pittman's got the Titans. I think that's kind of the range that I'm thinking for Cooper Kupp at the moment. Be sure to check in with Tanner on where he would put these guys. Let's flip on over here and speculate a little bit more. Jonathan Taylor, we do not know at this time if he's going to play or not. They who do they play this weekend? They play the Titans. Yeah, so it's a tough run defense. That's a really tough run defense. I still like Zack Moss a little bit because of how much work he has gotten. If there's no Jonathan Taylor, I think with the running back landscape being what it is, you probably have to start Zack Moss if you have him. And similarly, if you have Jonathan Taylor, I think based on the teams I've got, he'd be in every one of my lineups. Like if it's a flex decision between Tutu Atwell and Jonathan Taylor, I'm playing Jonathan Taylor on that one. Even at running back, like I'm playing him over Najee Harris this week. I'm playing him over Gus Edwards. I'm playing him over Miles Sanders. Saquon, if he also were to play, I would want to kind of keep an eye on the status there. I would probably play Taylor over Saquon. I'd probably play Gibbs over Taylor. I'd play Pierce over Taylor. I'd play Taylor over Ramondre Stevenson, I think. That's actually a decision I have to make in a league here real soon. If Jonathan Taylor is active, I think I would play him over Ramondre Stevenson. I would play him over Alexander Madison. Because Breece Hall has Denver, I'd play Breece Hall over Jonathan Taylor. But those are kind of some of the decisions you'll have to make if he's active. I am starting him over a Jaleel McLaughlin. I'm starting him over anybody that's kind of more of a part-time back. I think it's kind of how I'm drawing that line. Your Gus Edwardses, your Jalen Warrens, your Tyler Algiers, any of those guys who are, Kenneth Gainwell. I'm starting Jonathan Taylor over all those guys who would only get partial work. Because there's a chance that this week, Jonathan Taylor is only a part-time running back this week as they kind of work him back in. And look, I don't necessarily think Zack Moss is going to go from, 30 carries a week, it feels like, down to just 0. And so I think Zack Moss could hold a little bit of water. I would have really liked to have seen a better matchup this week for them than Tennessee. Tennessee, as much of a mess as the secondary is, they've been good against the run this year. So I don't love that form. I would play a lot of those guys over Zack Moss if Taylor is active. If Taylor plays, Zack Moss mostly becomes a sit for me. I would rather play a Jaleel McLaughlin if there's no Javonte. I think I'd place Moss over Pirine. I think I'd play Moss over like any of the running backs that really don't play much at all, like a Tyjae Spears, AJ Dillon. I'd play him over Cam Akers this week. I'd play him over Devin Singletary, Latavius Murray, Clyde, Tank. I would play Moss over all those guys. I think that's kind of where he lives very much in a Jalen Warren, Tyler Algier, Gus Edwards sort of range to me. Would Zack Moss, if Jonathan Taylor does play. As far as just a few quick flex options go here, just comparisons, I would play Jonathan Taylor over a boomer bust guy like a Gabe Davis, a George Pickens, a Christian Watson. I would play him over DeAndre Hopkins. I would play him over Zay Flowers. Yeah, I think that's kind of my line. I'm looking at the Fantasy Pros expert consensus rankings. If you kind of want to follow along on some of those decisions, those are wide receivers like 28 through 22. I would play him over all those guys except Christian Kirk. I'm surprised they don't have Christian Kirk any higher, but I think that's partly because experts don't like Christian Kirk. They like Calvin Ridley. Matt Mormon likes Christian Kirk, though, and he was told that he was wrong, and here we sit with this. But, if it's a flex decision, I'll be like a Nico Collins and Jonathan Taylor. I'm playing Jonathan Taylor there as well. That's going to kind of about do it, though. Like, I would rather have, like, Garrett Wilson. If you're stuck choosing between Garrett Wilson and Jonathan Taylor, I'm very sorry for what your season has been so far, but I think I'd play Garrett Wilson over Jonathan Taylor. Among wide receivers also, like, I talked about Tutu. Cooper Kupp is playing. If Jonathan Taylor is also playing, I would rather play Tutu than Zack Moss. I would rather play Drake London than Zack Moss in a flex decision. I think I would even take a stab at a Kansas City receiver over Zack Moss, like a Rashee Rice, a Sky Moore. I think those are the two. I don't think Kadarius Toney. I think I'd take a stab on the other two over him. I think I would play him over Josh Downs, his teammate. I think I'd rather play Zack Moss than Rashee Rice. I think I'd rather play him than a guy like Josh Reynolds now that Jameson Williams is back. I would be playing Zack Moss over Jameson Williams also. So that's kind of just where I think those guys sit here for this first week upon their return. Now, if you want to, this could be your chance to, I'm going to word it as buy low on a Puka Nacua. I think Puka's legit. I think Puka's going to hang around a wide receiver 20 at worst, sort of a range. I would not be against the idea of offering a Deebo Samuel, a Michael Pittman, for sure Garrett Wilson, right? If you want to try to get out of him while you can for a Puka. If the Puka owner is not bought into Puka and thought he was just a product of Cooper Kupp, I don't mind the idea of kicking the tires on a Puka Nacua trade offer. That's something I would consider trying to do and upgrade a wide receiver. In doing that, Jonathan Taylor, I think this could be your best chance to actually sell him. Running backs get broken, running backs get hurt. And it depends on what your team has been and what your team needs. If you look at your roster and say, I am the team that should be trading for Jonathan Taylor, then don't trade away Jonathan Taylor. If you've made it through the first 4 weeks and maybe you didn't suffer one of these running back injuries, maybe you hit the lottery and you picked up Devon Achane. Maybe you picked up, who's another one? Maybe you drafted Raheem Mostert late, right? Maybe you picked up Jerome Ford. There have been the running back landscape is really weird, and it's a lot different than what it was like on draft day. So look at your roster, and if you hit on a couple of these running backs, I think trying to trade Jonathan Taylor today for a guy who was maybe drafted in like round 2, if you can do that, I'd happily do that. So a guy like maybe, one of those young twos, not T. Higgins at this point though, but Devonta Smith, a Jalen Waddle. I would rather have Jonathan Taylor than Puka Nacua. Yeah, but that's an interesting one, isn't it? That was fun. I don't have any Jonathan Taylor, but if I did, that's a fun one. Maybe I'll offer Puka for Jonathan Taylor in a league. I don't know. That's a fun one though. What do you guys think? Shoot us a tweet, shoot us an X, if you will, and let us know. Would you guys rather have Jonathan Taylor or Puka Nacua or Cooper Kupp too for the rest of the season? And let us know your guys' thoughts on other starts and sit decisions. Be sure to always send those messages. If you're on the YouTubes, you can comment down below. Let us know your guys' thoughts on things. Come at us with some starts and sits decisions. We're always happy to answer those whenever we get those. So other than that, guys, Tanner will be back here with a full slate of the games for your starts and your sits this week. He's going to help you guys out with all those decisions and those rankings. Like I said, I just happened to be recording when I got the alert about Cooper Kupp. So I figured I'd hop on here and talk about a couple of guys who are a bit more newsworthy at the moment. So other than that, best of luck in your week 5 matchups. My goodness, the time is flying by this season. And I will see you guys on Monday morning with those waiver wire pickups and your Sunday recap.